Commander Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the docking bay, watching as the alien ships arrived at Kepler Station. The massive orbital platform floated in the darkness between Earth and Mars, its lights blinking like stars against the black space. Today was the day humans would train with the Galactic Defense Coalition for the first time. Morrison had been a soldier for 15 years. He had fought in the Titan Wars, survived the siege of Europa Base, and led his men through battles. That would give most people nightmares. But today felt different. Today, humanity would be judged by a species who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. His squad of 12 Marines stood behind him in formation. Their armor looked heavy and rough compared to the sleek uniforms of the station crew. The ceramic plates were scratched and dented from countless battles. The metal joints showed wear from years of use. But Morrison trusted this armor more than anything else in the universe. Lieutenant Amy Carter stepped up beside him. She was the squad's tech specialist, a small woman with sharp eyes who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. Her scanner beeped quietly as she checked the readings on their equipment. "All systems green, sir," she said softly. "The armor is performing perfectly," Morrison nodded. He knew their gear was good. The question was whether the aliens would see past its rough appearance to understand what it really was. The first alien ship docked with a soft hiss. The airlock opened and the Zephyrians emerged. They were tall and thin, their bodies made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through their transparent skin in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Their leader, Captain Zexthel, wore no armor at all. Instead, a shimmering energy field surrounded his body like a second skin. "Greetings, human warriors," Zexthel said, his voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm. "We have come to observe your methods." The way he said methods made it clear he expected to be disappointed. The second ship brought the Crothery. They looked like giant insects walking on two legs, with 4 arms and heads covered in natural armor that gleamed like black metal. Their warrior caste leader, Chatex Prime, clicked his mandibles as he studied the human formation. "Such crude protection," Chatex Prime buzzed. "Do humans not know how to grow proper armor?" The third ship carried the Vorthek. These reptilian creatures had scales that shifted color as they moved, and their bodies were covered in suits that seemed to be made of liquid metal. The suits flowed and changed shape as they walked, adapting to every step. Scalebearer Neth, their commander, hissed softly as he looked at the human Marines. "Primitive," he said simply. "How do you fight with such heavy, clumsy gear?" The last ship brought the Nexari. They were beings of gas and energy who needed mechanical bodies to interact with solid matter. Their exoskeletons were works of art, all smooth curves and glowing lines. The pilot suits moved with perfect grace, each step calculated by computers that could think faster than any human brain. Morrison kept his face blank as the aliens formed their own groups. He had expected this. Every species in the galaxy seemed to think humans were backward because their technology looked simple. None of them understood that simple often meant better. Sergeant Paul Bennett stood at Morrison's left shoulder. He was a big man with scars on his face from the Battle of New Shanghai. His armor was the most battered of all, with ceramic plates that had been replaced so many times they no longer matched. But Bennett had been in more fights than any 3 aliens combined, and he was still alive. "Same old story," Bennett muttered quietly. "They think we're cavemen with ray guns." The aliens continued their inspection. They walked around the human Marines like they were examining museum pieces. Captain Zexthel's energy shield flickered as he moved, casting rainbow patterns on the walls. He stopped in front of Corporal Lisa Murphy, the squad's demolitions expert. "Tell me, human," Zextel said, "why do you cover yourself in metal and stone? Do you not trust your own skin?" Murphy stared straight ahead, following orders to stay silent, but Morrison could see her jaw tighten. She had earned her scars in the underground tunnels of Ganymede, where alien weapons had tried to cook her alive inside her suit. The armor had saved her life. But explaining that to a crystal being who had never been shot at seemed pointless. Chatex Prime approached Private Danny Walsh. the squad sniper. The Krathri warrior was twice Walsh's size, his natural armor thick enough to stop bullets. He tapped Walsh's helmet with one claw, making a hollow sound. "Fragile," Tretex Prime announced. "One strike would crack this shell." "How do you fight when you break so easily?" Walsh said nothing, but his hands tightened on his rifle. Morrison knew the young man was thinking about the time he had taken a direct hit from a plasma cannon on Ceres and kept fighting. The helmet had cracked, but it had held together long enough to get him to safety. Scalebearer Neth slithered over to examine Private Maria Santos, who handled communications for the squad. His liquid metal suit rippled as he moved, showing off its ability to adapt to any threat. He touched one of the ceramic plates on Santos's chest armor with a scaled finger. "Rigid," he hissed, "inflexible. How does this protect you when it cannot?" "Change?" Santos stared at the wall behind the alien's head. She remembered the time her armor had saved her from a chemical attack on Europa. The ceramic had absorbed the acid that would have melted through any adaptive material. Sometimes being rigid was exactly what you needed, the Nexari commander approached last. His mechanical body moved with perfect precision, every joint calculated for maximum efficiency. He studied the human armor with sensors that could see through solid matter. "Crude construction," the Nexari said in a voice like a computer trying to sound human. "Multiple layers of inferior materials. Why not use energy shields or adaptive systems?" Morrison finally spoke. "Because this works." The aliens turned to look at him. Captain Zexthal's energy shield brightened, showing his amusement. "Works?" he asked. "Human, your species has been in space for barely 2 centuries. We have been warriors for millennia. Perhaps you should learn from those with more experience." "Perhaps," Morrison said calmly. "Or perhaps you should wait too. See how it works before you judge it." The tension in the room grew thick. The aliens exchanged glances, their earlier amusement turning to irritation. They were not used to being challenged by a species they considered primitive. Tretex Prime stepped forward, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "You speak boldly for one wearing scrap metal and pottery." Morrison smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "This scrap metal and pottery has kept us alive through wars you can't imagine. But if you want to see how well it works, we're about to find out." The briefing officer, a nervous-looking station commander, stepped into the room. "All forces report to Briefing Room 7, he announced. "The training exercise begins in 1 hour. As the aliens filed out, still talking among themselves about human foolishness, Morrison's squad remained in formation. Amy Carter checked her scanner again, and her readings made her smile. "Sir," she said quietly, "their equipment is impressive, but it's all designed for showing off." "Ours is designed for staying alive," Morrison nodded. "That's the difference between warriors and soldiers, Lieutenant. Warriors fight for glory. Soldiers fight to go home." The human Marines followed their commander toward the briefing room, their armor clanking with each step. Behind them, the aliens continued their conversations about human primitiveness. Unaware that they were about to learn a lesson in what real combat armor could do, the exercise would begin soon, and the shooting would start. Then they would see which philosophy worked better, advancement or survival. The briefing room was filled with tension as thick as smoke. Commander Jake Morrison sat at the long metal table, studying the holographic display of Series 7 mining colony. The asteroid base looked like a maze of tunnels and chambers carved deep into the rock. Perfect for close combat. Perfect for testing armor. Captain Zexthal floated above his chair, his energy shield casting rainbow patterns on the walls. His crystalline body pulsed with light as he spoke to the other alien commanders. They were discussing strategy, but Morrison could hear the mockery in their voices. They kept looking at the human Marines and shaking their heads. "The exercise is simple," announced General Korath, the station's alien military advisor. His species was new to Morrison, with gray skin and too many eyes. "Automated defense drones will simulate an enemy attack on the mining facility. All forces must work together to repel the invasion and secure the colony." Morrison nodded. He had fought in similar scenarios before, but never with allies who thought he was a liability. Scalebearer Neth's liquid metal suit rippled as he leaned forward. "The human forces should remain in reserve," he hissed. "Their primitive equipment will only slow us down. We can handle this ourselves." "Agreed," buzzed Chetek's Prime. His black armor gleamed under the lights as he clicked his mandibles. "Perhaps the humans can guard the rear positions while real warriors do the fighting." The Nexari commander's mechanical body whirred softly. "Our sensors show the human armor has significant weaknesses. Multiple structural flaws, heavy weight reducing mobility. They should not be in the front lines." Morrison felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. "My squad has experience in close quarters combat. We can handle ourselves." Captain Zexthal's shield flared brighter. "Experience with what? Throwing rocks at each other?" "Human, you have been in space for barely 2 centuries. Some of us have been fighting wars since before your species discovered fire." "Maybe," Morrison said quietly, "but we learned fast." The briefing continued with the aliens making plans that completely ignored the human presence. They assigned themselves the important positions and left the humans to cover the escape routes. Morrison listened without comment, already forming his own strategy after the meeting. Morrison gathered his squad in their temporary barracks. The room was small and cramped, nothing like the spacious quarters given to the alien forces. But the human Marines had lived in worse places. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat cross-legged on her bunk, her scanner open in her lap. She was running diagnostics on their equipment, checking every system twice. The green lights on her display made her smile. "Sir," she said, "I've been analyzing their gear. It's impressive, but it's all designed for perfect conditions. Clean environments, measured threats, predictable enemies." Sergeant Paul Bennett cleaned his rifle with practiced motions. His weathered hands moved automatically, a ritual he had performed thousands of times. "Fancy equipment for fancy wars," he muttered. "But this isn't going to be a fancy war." Morrison looked around at his squad. Corporal Lisa Murphy was checking her demolition charges, making sure each one was properly armed. Private Danny Walsh was calibrating his sniper scope, adjusting for the asteroid's low gravity. Private Maria Santos was testing her communications equipment, establishing backup frequencies in case the primary channels were jammed. They were all doing the same thing, preparing for the unexpected, planning for things to go wrong, getting ready to survive. "Tell me about the armor," Morrison said to Carter. The young lieutenant's eyes lit up. She loved talking about their equipment, especially to people who actually understood it. "Each suit is built in layers, sir. The outer ceramic plates are designed to crack when hit by energy weapons. The cracking spreads the impact across the entire surface instead of letting it punch through." She pointed to Bennett's chest plate, which showed old crack patterns like spider webs. "Those marks aren't damage. They're proof the armor worked." Each crack absorbed energy that would have killed him. "The metal backing is titanium steel composite," Carter continued. "It's flexible enough to bend without breaking, but strong enough to stop anything that gets through the ceramic. And the whole system is designed to be repaired in the field with basic tools." Private Walsh looked up from his scope. "What about their gear? The energy shields and adaptive armor?" Carter pulled up readings on her scanner. "The Zephyrian energy shields are powerful, but they drain their power cells fast. Under sustained fire, they'll fail within minutes. The Crathari natural armor is tough, but it's vulnerable to specific frequencies. The Vorthak nanotechnology is impressive, but it can't handle electromagnetic pulses. And the Nexari exoskeletons are perfect machines, which means they break down when damaged." Morrison nodded slowly. Every piece of alien equipment was designed to be superior in single combat, but war wasn't single combat. War was chaos, confusion, and things breaking when you needed them most. "What about us?" asked Private Santos. "Our armor is built for war," Morrison said simply. "Real war. The kind where you get shot at for hours, where your equipment gets damaged, where you have to keep fighting even when everything goes wrong." He walked over to the wall display showing their mission parameters. The mining colony was a perfect killing ground. Narrow tunnels, multiple levels, lots of places for enemies to hide. The kind of place where fancy equipment didn't matter as much as experience and determination. The aliens are thinking like this is a game, Morrison continued. They expect clean fights with clear rules. They've never been in a real battle where the enemy doesn't play fair. Bennett looked up from his rifle. What's the plan, sir? Morrison smiled grimly. We do what we always do. We survive. We adapt. We win. The squad spent the next hour going through their equipment one more time. They checked every joint, every seal, every connection. They tested their communications, their weapons, their life support systems. They made sure they had backup plans for their backup plans. While they worked, Morrison could hear the aliens in the next section of the station. They were laughing and talking, confident in their superior technology. None of them were checking their gear. Why would they? Their equipment was perfect. Carter finished her diagnostics and looked up at Morrison. So there's something else. The exercise parameters show the drones are programmed to use sustained fire tactics. Continuous bombardment over long periods. The kind of attack that overwhelms single-target defenses, Morrison nodded. He had expected something like that. The exercise was designed to test endurance, not just firepower. It would separate the warriors from the soldiers. Good, he said. That's exactly the kind of fight we're designed for. The warning klaxon sounded throughout the station. All forces were to report to their transport ships immediately. The exercise was about to begin. Morrison's squad formed up in the corridor, their armor making familiar sounds as they moved. The ceramic plates clicked softly against each other. The metal joints whispered as they flexed. The life support systems hummed quietly. It was the sound of equipment that had been tested in real combat, proven in blood. The alien forces were already aboard their sleek transport ships. Through the viewports, Morrison could see them making final preparations. The Zephyrians were charging their energy shields. The Krathri were polishing their natural armor. The Vorthak were running system checks on their nanotechnology. The Nexari were calibrating their mechanical bodies. All of them looked confident. All of them expected an easy victory. Morrison's squad boarded their transport, a rough military vessel that looked like it had seen better decades. The ship was scarred from combat, patched with spare parts, and held together with determination and prayer. But it flew, and it got them where they needed to go. As the transport lifted off toward Series 7, Morrison looked out at the alien ships flying beside them. They were beautiful works of art, perfect and pristine. His ship looked like junk in comparison, but junk that worked was better than art that broke. And in about an hour, everyone would find out which philosophy was right. The transport ships descended toward Series 7 like metal birds diving toward prey. Through the viewport, Commander Jake Morrison could see the mining colony spread across the asteroid's surface. Metal buildings and equipment dotted the rocky landscape. Connected by covered walkways that protected workers from the vacuum of space, the colony looked peaceful, but Morrison knew that was about to change. Somewhere in those buildings, automated defense drones were waiting to test every piece of equipment. Every tactical decision, every assumption about warfare that the mixed forces carried with them. All forces, prepare for deployment, came the voice of General Korath over the communication system. The exercise begins in 10 minutes. Remember, this is a simulation, but the weapons will deliver real pain. Fight smart, fight together, and show the galaxy what cooperation can accomplish. Morrison looked around at his squad. They sat quietly in their seats, checking their gear one final time. No nervous chatter, no last-minute doubts, just professional. Soldiers preparing for another day at work. The alien forces were different. Through the open communication channels, Morrison could hear excited voices talking about glory and victory. The Zephyrians were discussing how quickly they could overwhelm the enemy positions. The Krathri were arguing about who would claim the most kills. The Vorthak were debating the best way to show off their adaptive armor. The Nexari were calculating optimal attack patterns. They all sounded like they were going to a sporting event. Not a battle. The transport ships touched down at the colony's main landing pad. The airlock doors opened with a hiss, and the mixed forces deployed into the artificial atmosphere of the mining facility. Morrison stepped onto the metal platform and immediately began analyzing the terrain. The colony was built in levels, with the main structures on the surface and mining tunnels extending deep underground. Multiple choke points. Limited visibility. Perfect for an ambush. The alien forces formed up in parade formations, their equipment gleaming under the artificial lights. Captain Zextel's energy shield cast rainbow patterns on the walls as he surveyed the area. His crystalline body pulsed with confidence. "Humans," he called out, "remain in the rear positions as planned. We will handle the primary assault." Morrison nodded without argument. He had learned long ago that sometimes the best strategy was to let others make the first mistakes. The exercise began with a low rumble that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Warning lights flashed red throughout the colony as the automated systems came online. Defense drones began emerging from hidden positions, their weapons already charging. "Contact front," shouted Chitex Prime as the first wave of drones appeared. "All forces advance." The alien forces moved forward in perfect formation. The Zephyrions led the charge, their energy shields blazing like small suns. Behind them came the Krathari, their natural armor gleaming as they scuttled forward on four legs. The Vorthek flowed like liquid metal, their adaptive suits shifting to meet each threat. The Nexari strode forward with mechanical precision, their sensors calculating every angle. Morrison's squad took position behind cover, watching the aliens advance. They moved like they were in a parade, confident and proud. It was beautiful to watch. It was also exactly what the defense drones were designed to counter. The first barrage hit the alien forces like a hammer blow. The drones opened fire with sustained energy bursts, not single shots but continuous streams of painful but non-lethal force. The exercise weapons were designed to simulate real combat without causing permanent damage, but they still hurt enough to disable anyone they hit. Captain Zextel's energy shield flared as dozens of energy beams struck it simultaneously. The shield held for a few seconds, then began to flicker. The rainbow patterns turned angry red as the power cells drained faster than they could recharge. "Impossible!" Zextel shouted over the communications channel. "The shield should hold." But Morrison could see what was happening. The shield was designed to stop single powerful hits, not sustained bombardment. Each energy beam was weak enough that the shield could handle it alone, but together they overwhelmed the system's capacity. The Krathari warriors pushed forward, trusting their natural armor to protect them. The black carapaces that covered their bodies were tough enough to stop bullets, but the exercise weapons used a different frequency. Instead of bouncing off, the energy beams found the exact wavelength that made the Krathari nervous system scream in pain. Chitex Prime collapsed to his knees, his mandibles clicking frantically. "The armor burns," he buzzed. "Something is wrong with the simulation." The Vorthak tried to adapt, their liquid metal suits flowing and changing to counter each new threat. But the drones were using electromagnetic pulses mixed with their energy weapons. The nanotechnology that made the suits so flexible also made them vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. The adaptive systems began malfunctioning, leaving the Vorthik warriors exposed. Scalebearer Neth's suit froze in mid-transformation, leaving him trapped in a form that couldn't protect him from the continuing barrage. "Systems failing," he hissed. "The nanites are not responding." The Nexari fared no better. Their mechanical bodies were marvels of engineering, but they were also incredibly complex. When the electromagnetic pulses hit their systems, circuits began overloading. The perfect calculations that made them so graceful turned into stumbling confusion. The Nexari commander's voice became distorted as his vocal systems malfunctioned. "Error, error, combat protocols failing, requesting immediate technical support." In less than 5 minutes, the alien forces were in full retreat. Their advanced equipment, so impressive in perfect conditions, was failing under the stress of real combat. The exercise was designed to simulate actual warfare, not the clean battles they were used to. Morrison watched the chaos with professional interest. Everything was going exactly as he had expected. The aliens had made the classic mistake of confusing superiority with invincibility. "Sir," Lieutenant Amy Carter said quietly, "should we assist them?" Morrison shook his head. "Not yet. Let them learn." The defense drones pressed their advantage, pouring more fire into the retreating alien forces. Captain Zexthal's energy shield finally collapsed completely, leaving him vulnerable to the continuing barrage. He cried out in pain as the exercise weapons struck his crystalline body directly. "Cease fire!" he shouted. "The simulation is malfunctioning. Our equipment should not be failing like this." But General Korath's voice came over the communications channel, calm and professional. "All systems are functioning normally. The exercise continues." Morrison's squad remained in their covered positions, watching the aliens struggle. Their ceramic and metal armor showed no signs of stress. The energy weapons that were overwhelming the advanced alien technology barely registered on their simple, but effective protection. "Now," Morrison said quietly, the human Marines moved forward. Not in a parade formation, but in proper combat formation. They used cover effectively, moved in coordinated teams, and advanced with the steady patience of soldiers who had learned their trade in real battles. The defense drones turned their attention to the humans, unleashing the same devastating barrage that had broken the alien forces. Energy beams struck the human armor with impacts that should have disabled them instantly, but the humans kept moving. Private Danny Walsh took a direct hit to his helmet that would have knocked out any alien warrior. The ceramic cracked in a spider web pattern, spreading the energy across the entire surface. The impact was absorbed and dispersed. Walsh barely stumbled before continuing his advance. Corporal Lisa Murphy absorbed 3 hits to her chest plate. The ceramic shattered and fell away, but the metal backing held. The layered construction had done its job, turning a killing blow into a minor inconvenience. Private Maria Santos's communications equipment took a direct hit that sent sparks flying, but the human gear was designed to degrade gracefully. Even damaged, it kept working. She maintained contact with her squad while continuing to advance. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans pushed forward through fire that had stopped them cold. The primitive-looking armor that they had mocked was proving superior to their advanced technology. "How?" whispered Captain Zexthal. "How are they still fighting?" Morrison heard the question over the communications channel. He smiled grimly. As he advanced with his squad, his own armor scarred but intact. "Because," he said simply, "this is what we built it for." The defense drones continued their relentless attack as Morrison's squad advanced through the mining colony. Energy beams filled the air like deadly lightning, but the human Marines moved forward with steady determination. Their armor absorbed hit after hit, the ceramic plates cracking and shattering to spread the impact, while the metal backing held firm. Behind them, the alien forces struggled to understand what they were seeing. Captain Zexthal's crystalline body flickered with confused patterns of light. His energy shield was completely drained, leaving him defenseless and hiding behind a metal storage container. "This is impossible," he transmitted to the other alien commanders. "Their equipment is primitive, Stone Age technology. How can they survive what stopped us?" Chitek's prime clicked his mandibles in frustration. His natural armor, which had been his pride and glory for centuries, felt useless against weapons that seemed designed specifically to hurt his species. The humans must be cheating somehow. No one fights through pain like that. But Morrison could hear their confusion over the open communication channels, and he understood their problem. They had never fought a war where survival mattered more than victory. They had never needed equipment that could take damage and keep working. Sergeant Paul Bennett took another direct hit to his shoulder plate. The ceramic exploded in a shower of fragments, but Bennett barely flinched. He had been hit by worse things in real battles, and his armor had saved him every time. The metal backing absorbed the energy and spread it across his entire torso. "How long have you been wearing that armor?" asked Scalebearer Neth over the radio. His voice was filled with pain from his malfunctioning nanotechnology suit. Bennett kept advancing as he answered. 15 years, same basic design anyway." We replace the ceramic plates when they get too damaged, but the metal framework is original. 15 years? The Vorthek commander sounded shocked. Our equipment is upgraded every year. How can you trust something so old? Because it works, Bennett said simply. And because we know exactly how it works? Lieutenant Amy Carter moved up beside Morrison, her scanner showing green lights across the board. Even after taking multiple hits, all human systems were functioning normally. She watched the display with professional satisfaction. Sir, she said, their equipment is failing because it's too complex. The Zephyrian shields need perfect power regulation. The Krathari armor is vulnerable to specific frequencies. The Vorthak nanotechnology can't handle electromagnetic interference. The Nexari exoskeletons need constant computer support. Morrison nodded as he took cover behind a mining vehicle. And ours? Ours is simple: ceramic breaks to absorb energy. Metal bends to spread impact. Life support runs on basic chemical reactions. No computers to jam, no frequencies to exploit, no power cells to drain. The revelation was spreading through the alien forces as they watched the humans continue their advance. These primitive warriors with their crude equipment were succeeding where superior technology had failed. Private Danny Walsh reached the first defensive position, a drone emplacement that had been pouring fire into the alien formations. The automated weapon turned toward him, charging for a point-blank shot that should have ended his participation in the exercise immediately. Walsh didn't try to dodge. Instead, he raised his rifle and aimed carefully, trusting his armor to protect him. The drone fired at the same moment he did. The energy beam struck Walsh's chest plate dead center. The ceramic shattered completely, leaving a crater in the protective layer. But the metal backing held, and Walsh's shot destroyed the drone's targeting system. The alien commanders watched in stunned silence as Walsh continued moving, his armor damaged but still functional. In their military traditions, taking such damage meant immediate medical evacuation. But the human just checked his equipment, confirmed that life support was still working, and kept fighting. "Explain this to me," demanded the Nexari commander, his mechanical voice distorted by system failures. "How does he continue fighting? With such damage?" Amy Carter answered, her voice calm and professional. "Because the armor isn't designed to be perfect. It's designed to fail safely. Each layer has a specific job. The ceramic breaks to absorb energy. If it gets destroyed, the metal takes over. If the metal gets damaged, the padding spreads the impact. If everything fails, the life support keeps him alive long enough to get help." "But it looks so crude," protested Captain Zexthal. "That's the point," Morrison said, advancing past another destroyed drone. "We learned a long time ago that fancy equipment breaks when you need it most. Simple equipment might not look impressive, but it works when everything goes wrong." The exercise continued, but now the roles were completely reversed. The alien forces remained in cover, their advanced equipment either broken or unreliable. The human Marines pushed forward, systematically destroying drone positions with tactics learned in real combat. Corporal Lisa Murphy reached a fortified bunker that had been giving the aliens serious problems. Instead of trying to overwhelm it, with superior firepower, she studied the position for weaknesses. Her demolition training told her exactly where to place charges for maximum effect. The bunker had been designed to withstand frontal assault, but Murphy found a maintenance tunnel that led underneath the position. She crawled through the narrow space, her armor scraping against the metal walls but protecting her from the sharp edges that would have cut an unprotected person. "How does she fit through there?" asked Chitex Prime, watching through his damaged optical sensors. "The armor is articulated," Bennett explained. "Each piece moves independently. It's not as sleek as your gear, but it's flexible where it needs to be." Murphy planted her charges and crawled back to safety. The explosion that followed collapsed the bunker and eliminated 3 drone positions at once. The alien forces stared in amazement at tactics they had never considered. "We always fight from the front," Scalebearer Neff admitted. "Honor demands direct confrontation." "Honor doesn't stop bullets," Morrison replied. "And dead heroes don't go home to their families." Private Maria Santos was maintaining communications for the entire human squad, coordinating their movements with practiced efficiency. Her equipment had taken damage, but the redundant systems kept working. She could talk to each Marine individually or broadcast to the whole group. The alien commanders tried to listen to human communications, hoping to understand their tactics. But what they heard confused them more than anything else. Murphy, watch your 6. Walsh, drone at 2 o'clock. Bennett, need covering fire. Santos, call in medical check on Zextel. The humans were not just fighting for themselves. Even while pushing forward through enemy fire, they were keeping track of their alien allies and making sure no one was seriously injured. Why do you care about us? Asked Captain Zextel, his voice small and confused. We mocked your equipment. We called you primitive. We said you were not real warriors. Morrison paused in his advance to look back at the alien positions. Because that's what soldiers do. We take care of each other, even when people don't appreciate it. The lesson was becoming clear to the alien forces. Human military equipment wasn't just about protection. It was about philosophy. Every piece of gear reflected values learned in desperate battles where failure meant extinction. The Zephyrians had designed shields that made them feel invincible, but humans had built armor that helped them survive when nothing else would. The Crathari trusted natural armor that proclaimed their strength, but humans wore protection that admitted their weakness and compensated for it. The Vorthak used adaptive technology that responded to every threat, but humans carried gear that worked regardless of what the enemy threw at them. The exercise was nearly over, with the human squad having eliminated most of the drone positions. But the real victory wasn't tactical. It was the understanding that was spreading through the alien forces. They had spent so long believing that advanced meant better that they had forgotten what equipment was really for. It wasn't meant to make you feel superior. It was meant to bring you home alive. The last defense drone powered down with a mechanical whine that echoed through the mining colony. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the center of the main complex, his armor scarred and battered, but still intact. Around him, his squad was already checking their equipment and preparing for the next mission. Even though the exercise was over, the alien forces slowly emerged from their covered positions, their advanced equipment damaged and their pride wounded. Captain Zextel's crystalline body had lost its bright glow, and his energy shield generators were completely drained. Chitex Prime moved carefully, his natural armor still sensitive from the frequency attacks. Scale-bearer Neth's nanotechnology. Suit hung loose and unresponsive, while the Nexari commander's mechanical body sparked and stuttered with each step, but they were all alive, and they were all learning. General Korath materialized on the central holographic display, his multiple eyes focusing on the mixed forces. Exercise complete. Mission objectives achieved. All forces returned to the briefing room for analysis. The journey back to the transport ships was quiet. The aliens who had been so confident and mocking a few hours earlier now walked in thoughtful silence. They kept looking at the human Marines, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Morrison could hear their whispered conversations over the communication channels. They were discussing human tactics, human equipment, and human philosophy. The mockery was gone, replaced by something that might eventually become respect. Back in the briefing room, the holographic displays showed the complete record of the exercise. The aliens studied the footage with the intensity of students trying to learn a difficult lesson. I do not understand, admitted Captain Zextel, his voice much quieter than before. How did you know our equipment would fail? Morrison stood at the front of the room, still wearing his damaged armor. We didn't know for certain, but we fought enough battles to recognize the signs. What signs? Asked Chitex Prime, his mandibles clicking nervously. Lieutenant Amy Carter stepped forward, her scanner still showing the technical readouts from the exercise. Your equipment is designed for perfect conditions. Single opponents, clean environments, predictable threats. But war isn't perfect. She activated her display, showing the technical specifications of each alien system. The Zephyrian energy shields are incredibly powerful, but they drain energy fast under sustained fire. The Crathari natural armor is nearly invulnerable, except to specific frequencies. The Vorthak nanotechnology can adapt to anything until electromagnetic interference scrambles the control systems. The Nexari exoskeletons are perfectly engineered, which means any damage creates cascade failures. Scale-bearer Neth's damaged suit rippled weakly. And your equipment? Crude, Carter said with a smile. Simple, ugly, but it works when everything else fails. She walked over to Sergeant Paul Bennett, whose armor showed the most damage from the exercise. The ceramic plates were cracked and broken, the metal backing was dented, and the whole suit looked like it had been through a war. Sergeant Bennett has been wearing versions of this armor for 15 years. He's been shot, blown up, burned, frozen, and hit by everything from bullets to plasma cannons. The armor has saved his life more times than he can count. Bennett nodded. Grimly, the suit's been rebuilt piece by piece over the years. New ceramic plates, replacement joints, updated life support. But the basic design hasn't changed because it doesn't need to change. It works, the Nexari commander's mechanical voice crackled with interference. But it is so primitive. Our systems can adapt to any threat. Can they? Morrison asked. Your systems adapted perfectly to every threat except the one you actually faced. Our systems are designed for the threats we know exist: sustained fire, equipment damage, long battles where you can't stop to make repairs. Captain Zexthel's body pulsed with confused light patterns. But surely advanced technology is always superior to primitive technology. Morrison walked to the center of the room, his heavy boots making solid sounds on the metal floor. Advanced technology is superior when it works. But what happens when it doesn't work? What happens when your perfect equipment meets an imperfect enemy in an imperfect situation? He gestured to his squad, who stood quietly in their battered armor. We've learned that the most advanced weapon in the galaxy is useless if it breaks down when you need it. So we build equipment that might not be the best, but it's good enough, and it keeps working no matter what happens to it. The room fell silent as the alien commanders absorbed this lesson. They had spent centuries believing that technological superiority guaranteed military superiority. The idea that simpler equipment might actually be better was almost impossible. For them to accept, Chedex Prime broke the silence, his voice subdued. We have dishonored ourselves with our words. We called you primitive when we should have called you wise. You weren't wrong, Morrison said. Our equipment is primitive compared to yours. But primitive doesn't mean ineffective. Scale-bearer. Neth's suit managed to produce a weak hiss. How do you maintain morale when your equipment is so crude? How do your warriors feel confident wearing such basic protection? Private Danny Walsh stepped forward, his helmet still cracked from the exercise. Because we trust it, sir. This armor has saved my life 6 times in real combat. I know exactly what it can do and what it can't do. That's better than having perfect equipment that might fail when I need it most. Private Maria Santos nodded in agreement. Our gear isn't fancy, but it's reliable. When my communications equipment gets damaged, it degrades slowly. I can still talk to my squad even when half the systems are destroyed. That's worth more than perfect reception that disappears the moment something goes wrong. Corporal Lisa. Murphy held up one of her demolition charges. This explosive is 100 years old in design. No computers, no fancy targeting systems, no adaptive yield. But it blows up when I want it to, every single time. I don't need it to be smart. I need it to work. The alien commanders exchanged glances, beginning to understand the human philosophy. Equipment wasn't just about capability. It was about confidence. Soldiers who trusted their gear fought better, fought clearer, and survived longer. We request permission to extend these joint exercises, announced Captain Zexthel formally. We have much to learn from human military doctrine. Agreed, buzzed Chedex Prime. We wish to understand how humans maintain effectiveness under such adverse conditions. The Nexari commander's voice was clearer now as his systems slowly repaired themselves. Our engineers should study human equipment design. Perhaps we can learn to build systems that prioritize reliability over perfection. Morrison looked around the room at faces that had changed completely since the morning. The mockery was gone, replaced by curiosity and respect. "We'd be honored to continue training with you. But remember, we're not trying to prove we're superior, we're trying to survive." "Survival," repeated Scalebearer Neth thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is the most advanced military technology of all." The briefing ended with handshakes and formal military courtesies, but the real change was deeper than protocol. The alien forces had learned that strength came in many forms, and sometimes the most effective approach was the one that looked least impressive. As the mixed forces prepared to return to their ships, Morrison watched his squad performing their post-mission maintenance. They cleaned their weapons, checked their armor, and prepared their equipment for the next fight. It was a ritual as old as warfare itself, connecting them to countless soldiers throughout human history who had survived because they understood that their gear was only as good as the care they put into it. The aliens watched and learned, beginning to understand that human military effectiveness came not from superior technology, but from superior preparation, training, and the hard-won wisdom that came from being the underdogs who refused to quit. In the end, that was the most advanced technology of all.